Hi, welcome back to 12 Step Up. We are here with Cheryl. Hi, Cheryl.
Hi.
How are you?
Oh, I'm excited to be here today. I'm excited for this endeavor for you.
Thank you. So, you know why we're doing all this?
I do.
You
I
do?
do. I'm really grateful that I was chosen to be a part of it,
Yes.
for sure.
We try to help out as many people as we can. Your story helps someone.
Yeah.
Everybody's story helps someone. So let's kind of get into how how old were you when you started your drunk log, or rather drug log,
Sure.
whatever it is.
Yeah. Um, so I was a late bloomer.
Okay.
I um I come from a family of six, and I'm number five. So I got to see my older siblings. Um,
Were they were they
right. I got to see my older siblings getting in trouble.
okay? So they were
Yeah,
active.
yeah, drugs, alcohol, and everything that goes along with that. And so, my story is, I struggled with the obsession of the mind from a very early age. But my obsession would fall under grades, exercising, um, active in academics, guys.
Yeah.
And I took hostages. I didn't date a lot, but I'd grab one and I'd keep one for a couple years. Um, and so my first drink um, would have been at my sister's bachelorette party. Um, I was 17 years old, and summer of my 17th year, 1997.
That's not really a late bloomer. I think a lot of us start.
Well, so you'll understand the late
Okay.
bloomer as we get into my,
Okay.
yeah. So I was 17 and it was my sister's bachelorette party. I was protected. I was safe. It was just us sisters and one of her friends. But that is definitely the time where I felt it arrived because I got drunk. I connected with my sister, who was the captain of the dance team, most popular. For the first time, we had a blast together. Um, but I was so sick the next day, I could not understand why people drank to that extent because it was miserable. And so I didn't drink again.
I mean, you liked the feeling then,
I liked the
but you didn't
feeling,
like the
but I
after
didn't
effect.
like the after effects.
Gotcha.
Exactly, exactly. I was so sick at her wedding. I was so sick walking down the aisle, and I was ashamed. I was embarrassed. That is not who I wanted to be. You know, I had this image to uphold, choir, choir girl. You know, and so um, the following summer, I think I had a drink off my stepbrother's whiskey on rocks, and I was like, gosh, why do people do this? This is so nasty. Oh my gosh. And I remember him inviting me to go camping again, and he would get the good stuff, the cheerleader bag, you know, whatever. And in my mind I was like, no, no thank you, you know. And and so I had like one other time with my high school sweetheart just after we'd graduated. He just wanted to see me intoxicated. And so I agreed. And so I had white Zinfandel with squirt.
In his defense, when I was in high school, I'd love to see my girlfriend intoxicated. So,
Yeah.
in his
Yeah.
defense,
Yeah. Well, he had already started his story. We were high school sweethearts. And so I did get drunk to appease him and enjoyed that. And he monitored me to make sure that I didn't get drunk to the point where I was going to be really sick the next day, and I appreciated that. Um, and um, and then I didn't drink again, and that would have been summer of 1998. I was 18 years old, and I went to college for dental assisting. And he ended up going off to boot camp. He joined the Air Force and came home fall of 1999. I had finished dental assisting, was working for an orthodontist office, and he he and I reconnected, and more ways than one. And he went back down south to his finish out processing at the tech school, and I found out I was pregnant. And I did drink when he came. We did have one night there. So I mean, like, if you're getting that, I can count on the fingers, in my younger age as far as late bloomer goes. And found out I was pregnant after he went back, and so we had a shotgun wedding.
Those are the best.
Right, right. You may know you're not doing something you should you're doing something you shouldn't be doing if the entire time you were standing at the altar and all that's going through your mind repeatedly is, I shouldn't be doing this. I shouldn't be doing this. We
Yeah,
shouldn't be doing this. We shouldn't be
that's
doing this.
usually a signal.
It's just slight, but we had all of our family there. My closest friend, who was also my boss, and I had that image to uphold. I'd gotten pregnant, so I needed to switch my obsession to building a family, and got married, moved to Wichita, Kansas. I'm a Kennewick High grad. Let's just throw that there. So we were living here. I was living here. It's down there, but moved to Wichita, Kansas, and my obsession turned to family. Um, and gosh dang it, he just wasn't behaving as of the father that I had envisioned. He had his own story, and so we had our clashes there. I went out on my 21st birthday. Got hammered as hammered could be. Um, but everything in between, my obsession was family. And so, needless to say, his story progressed quicker than mine, and he was court martialed in 2005. Our firstborn that I'd been pregnant with was 5 years old, and our secondborn was a year old. And went through the court martial process and put the stipulation if he ever used again, we would be done. And the
So,
problem
so that was
there
an ultimatum that you
that
you
I
you.
had placed
Okay.
with drugs, but let's backtrack just a few months. When he came home and told me that he'd been pulled into Office of Special Investigation, I held the wife role, stayed solid for him while we sat and talked through it. Um, but once he went off to work, I fell apart. My white picket fence had fallen down,
Yeah.
and I was just completely and utterly heartbroken. No hope, totally hopeless. Um, and so that's when my drinking became a problem for me.
How old were you then?
I was 25 years old. 25 years old, and I'd start drinking just before he was going to get home because I just could not be the wife that I needed to be sober. And so what I didn't realize is his disease was progressing, and so he didn't notice that his alcohol was disappearing. He was busy covering his own tracks. He thought it was him drinking it. He didn't realize I had started. And um,
Now, through all this time, did any of the kids ever witness anything as far as like your drinking
domestic
or
violence.
domestic violence? Okay.
Yeah, because that just kind of goes hand in hand with well, I shouldn't say with everyone, but in my story,
Right.
domestic violence.
How old were your kids then?
They were 5 and 1.
5 and 1. Okay.
Yeah,
That's
and
tough.
so the next door neighbors called the police one time, and he was hauled off, and they really tried the the officers tried questioning me, tried getting me to open up, and I was going to protect my family to the end. So um, I didn't. Um, I should go backwards just a little bit, because part of the obsession of the mind, I mean, it's just unhealthy thought process, right? And so my part in our marriage, in fueling the fire, was the roller coaster of feelings that um, that I had in 1999, when just before I found out I was pregnant with my daughter. I had my first suicide attempt. My younger sister found me on my parents' bed with my dad's gun, and and then to try and gain control of the family unit, um, I got emotionally drunk, really, because he was going out, staying out all night, and so I pulled the fall off my rocker and swallowed a bunch of pills. Um, and then my third attempt was not long before he got called into to Office of Special Investigation, and at that point, I actually went through a 6-week um, intensive outpatient counseling, um, and but like I said, alcohol wasn't an issue for me yet.
Right.
So we talked more of things from my childhood. I had some abuse in my childhood, a lot of abuse in my childhood. But anyways, so back forward to um, our marriage. He went to jail for a couple of months, and I moved back here with the kids, and that's when my closet drinking started. I was living with my younger sister, and I was so grateful to them for housing us. But
At the time, you have two kids,
two children,
two
yes,
children.
5 and 1, kindergarten and toddler, and my focus had to be on them. I had to be taking care of the family, but I couldn't face my own feelings, and
Right.
so numbing, and whether it was drinking from my car or from my closet, um, and so when he got out and came back, he drank openly. He had zero shame. He went to work. He had the right to drink at home, and so our family, encouraged us. It's time to get out on your own, and so we got a home in Richland, and that's that's when I started drinking openly with him, and he quickly realized I had an issue. And so he tried to help me control it, because he didn't want alcohol out of the house. And it
Of
progressed.
course not.
Yeah, it progressed. And so, and the domestic violence progressed. And so we reached the point where it was like, we're only going to drink on the weekends. And so we went a week.
Control drinking. Perfect.
We went a week drinking tea during the week, and that weekend we got invited to a family dinner on his side, and we were both drinking. And I said something that upset him. I wasn't very tactful, and made a comment about his poker chip stack versus his brothers. So went back home pretty quickly. He loaded up and had a very tumultuous night, and I was arrested the next day.
You were arrested.
I was
You
arrested
put
the
hands
next
on him.
day. I pulled a knife, and
Yeah.
and I had snapped. I pulled a knife. I didn't touch him. When he looked down at me and told me, "You're not going to do anything with that." I
Wait. So you
dropped
pulled a
it.
knife? Was it because he was assaulting you, or were
He,
you,
yeah,
or
he
was
had.
it just because you were feeling threatened?
So he had thrown me around all night.
Okay.
He'd broken my favorite flat iron, and um, got up in the morning and was coming at me again, not physically, but emotionally. And I snapped, and I pulled the knife, and he looked down at me and said, "You're not going to do anything with that." And so I dropped it and ran out the door. And he called the police, concerned that, I'd had 3 suicide attempts already, and so he was concerned for my mental health. And yeah, so I was arrested. I was booked into Benton County Jail and stood the entire time in the jail cell with about 5 other women and saw the crap on the walls. Just, felt I was hungover, felt like shit, you know.
I've been there.
Yeah, yeah. And I was like, this is not my life. This is not how I'm going to live.
How
I
old are you then?
cannot do this. I was 26 years old, just about to turn 27. So this was December of 2006. Yeah. And so got released from jail, and my sister said, okay, this is it. You guys need to separate. You guys need to separate and get this stuff sorted out. And of course, I puked everything he'd done to me, and my family was like, no, you guys are done. And so filed for divorce. And the divorce proceedings started, and he had his visitation time, and he popped in one day, and I was really intoxicated right after school trying to help my kid with a science project. And so he kind of tried to take control there in that moment. And so my then brother-in-law is the first one who ever 12-stepped me. He runs the adult drug court program for our counties here. And he sat me down at their kitchen table and went through the standard questions. And, when we're in protective of our disease, we're going to say just the right
Right.
thing, and
Right.
we're not going to be honest. And I wasn't honest. And so he knew too. I could see it in his face. Like, looking back, I'm like, oh my gosh. Yeah. So he said, well, I understand that you don't feel you're to that stage, but to keep your side of the street clean, you may want to go to some of these recovery meetings, and and maybe have a slip sign so that it tracks to show that you're, you know, helping yourself. And I was like, okay, I don't have a problem. He's got the problem. And so went to my first recovery meeting and sat at the end of the table and listened to all the differences. There was no way, no how I was like those people. Bottom of the bottom. And I went back to doing my thing, cleaned up my side of the street, got control of my life, and started to manage my alcohol. But that was when driving intoxicated started.
So let's get to a little bit more nitty gritty.
Sure.
How bad did it actually have to get for you?
Bad.
Okay.
It.
Because we all have
I
bottoms,
am
right? And
sure, sure. So I first walked into those rooms knowing that I had a problem, just shy of my 28th birthday. But I was young
Mhm.
and I had plenty of life left in me. I had a career and I wasn't done.
Right.
And so over the next 10 years, it progressed. I was in and out of the rooms, the recovery rooms, and just a tornado in friends' lives, in the couple of relationships that I had, just an emotional roller coaster, very unhealthy, but yet maintaining my family life, my career. So in my head, my life wasn't unmanageable, it wasn't out of control yet. And COVID was a gift to me. I In the months leading up, I was digging down deep. I was drinking out of my master bathroom. I was hiding it from my children, um, and I was no longer going to the recovery meetings. And so when COVID hit, I was drinking from home, and just a few months before that, the shakes had started kicking in, and I blamed it on my anxiety. And I talked with my dad, who's a Vietnam vet, and he said, just take one of these at night before you go to bed, THC capsule, and it'll help you sleep. And I was like, okay, well, my drug of choice is more. And so by the time COVID hit, I was drinking 24/7, and I was popping THC capsules every few hours, and driving intoxicated regularly. And so um, working from home, drinking, using 24/7, my body started to shut down. And my firstborn, who was 20 by that time, had enough. I had had a child in between, and so I had a 20-year-old, a 16-year-old, and a 6-year-old. And I was blacking out, passing out. And so she had found me in the bedroom, passed out, and took her siblings. Um, and so April 29th, 2020 is my sobriety date where I finally decided to stay.
Congratulations.
Thank you. And stay, surrender, and my dear, sweet, chosen sister, who is a very important part of my recovery. We've met early on in the halls. She got me to treatment within less than 48 hours. It was my
Awesome.
first time in treatment, and I became a mom at 19 years old. I became pregnant at 19, and so that was the first time in my life I got to take a really good look at myself, and for 28 days. And I walked into that treatment center protecting my disease. Found out almost 2 weeks in that I had neglected my dog, and he passed 2 hours after I left for treatment, and that knocked me to my knees. And that is when I did my first solid first step in recovery. And from that point forward, I was willing to go to all lengths, do everything that was suggested of me. And so I spent the 28 days in treatment. I came back. I did intensive outpatient treatment on Zoom, and attended meetings on Zoom, and got a sponsor, worked with her on Zoom. And by October of 2020, I was back in person meetings. And by February, I had a home group. I had a service position, and became active in recovery again. Scored myself a new sponsor, walked through the steps in a way that was just much more meaningful to me.
So basically, 12-step recovery program has really worked in your life.
Oh, definitely, most definitely. It's not it's for me, recovery 12-step program isn't it's not just about the alcohol. I mean, the alcohol was my biggest problem, but my thinking
Right.
my thinking is actually the true problem. And the recovery, the 12-step program that I'm an active part of, that process rewires my brain, and helps me to just walk through life differently. From the little daily life issues that I face, whether it's running late and the kid's not doing what she's supposed to be doing so we can get out the door, and I'm going to be late. Those are the kind of stressors that would push me to the point where by 5 I wanted that drink, and I wanted it
Right.
bad. Because don't you know what my life is like being a single mom? I work
So
my ass off.
that leads me to my next question. Now that you're in recovery,
Mm-hmm.
um, and obviously you're doing great. Well, I mean, I kind of know you a little bit,
Yeah.
so you're doing great. How is being a single mother in recovery and still doing all these commitments that you have, and still, flourishing in your program?
So a dear friend of mine years ago that I ruined the relationship with, we'll leave that because that's what happens when you're active um, in the disease. She told me, Cheryl, anything you put before your recovery, you will lose. And I reached that bottom to where I was faced with losing everything. And it finally clicked in my mind. And so for me, with that surrender and that willingness to go to all lengths, to do everything that's suggested, God took a hold of my life and He guides and directs it and He manages it in a way that I went from playing the greatest victim of single mom, of don't you know how hard my life is and don't you know what I do every single day, to my life flows. And he places me right where I need to be, whether it's a service position or at my child's school or working from home taking care of a sick child, or taking on an important project at work. He makes my life flow. And if my recovery isn't number one, I know where it'll go back to. So,
How is your relationship with your other children?
oh, I really thought that I had um, ruined my relationship with my firstborn. Um, I had put her through so much when she was 7 years old, and I had left this part out, but or didn't cover it. She'd found me on the bathroom floor, covered in puke. It was my last, essentially my last suicide attempt because I blacked out, passed out, and so her entire life, she dealt with this emotional roller coaster of a mother. She dealt with mom who couldn't get sober, and I dug myself deep enough where I was sure that our relationship was irreparable. But in treatment, thank goodness, I learned that I got a plan, a plan for re-entering the real world. And so when I came back, of course, she wanted to hear I'm sorry, but yet I'm sorry meant nothing. And the reality was is I wasn't to that point in my step work. And so I told her I knew that what I'd done was wrong, and I knew that I'd hurt my children, and I knew that I'd hurt, many people, and that the only thing I could do was go through the process. And she'd been in and out of the rooms with me. I'd take my kids to meetings, and so she understood recovery, and she understood that there was a process and respected that, but she was pretty hurt. And like I said, God took a hold of my life. He took a hold of my life, and he orchestrates it when I let him. And what came of that is that I have a healed relationship. We go through our rocky moments because we have different opinions, different political views, but our love and our relationship matters most to us, and we respect each other. Um, and so that relationship that I was sure I'd ruined, um,
Restored.
is better. It is. Oh.
So you're a great example to other single mothers because you have your own place. We're here at your place, as opposed to my messy place. But we're here. We're obviously here because, like, we love you, and we're actually gonna do a lot of band. The Seahawks are playing the Rams,
Hey,
or
go
rather,
Hawks! Go Hawks!
so you're pretty awesome. So you would say your life has completely changed since you came into recovery and you
Yeah,
started working a 12-step program. Um, I see it in you, and I see all the passion and all the emotions that you have, and I really appreciate you agreeing to do the interview because your story can help somebody else.
for sure, for sure. I get that there are overwhelming moments as a single parent that we have our own set of stressors.
Yeah, yeah,
But it is truly um, a life manual. There's nothing that we can't walk through. And I say we because, man, I can't do this on my own. And I'm not, I'm an introvert. I like my time by myself. But there again, I love the way God has orchestrated my life today, where I actually, enjoy having people over to my home for the Seahawks to beat the Rams, and to feed my peeps, to be perfecting my favorite dish. It's an incredible life, and there's hope. There's hope. We can make ourselves the greatest victims, or we can make ourselves the greatest overcomers, and that's what I feel like today. I'm an
Good. That's
overcomer.
awesome. That's awesome. So thank you guys for tuning in. I really appreciate Cheryl opening her home to us. Uh, Here at 12 Step, all we're trying to do is just share some stories. Hopefully, it'll help somebody. Um, do you have anything special to say to anybody or anything? I mean, it's this. We're kind of going raw on this,
Yeah,
but
yeah. There's
we
hope. There's hope. I swore I'd never have a cat. I swore I would never have a cat. My redemption cat. This is my redemption cat. She picked us through her foster mommy, and that pet that I neglected, I I thought I'd you know hold that hold on to that the rest of my life, and I've just had a healing in scoring this sweet little kitty cat that was supposed to be a gift for my daughter, and has been a gift to our home, to both of us. And I get to take care of another pet, another little animal, and I care about cleaning her her litter box and making sure she's fed and watered. And I find joy in it, because today, those little things, they're gifts.
yes, they
They're
are.
gifts. They're gifts. So I am so grateful that you're doing this. I'm excited to learn who all we reach, and just to be a hope. There's hope.
And you guys, if you guys know of anybody that has a similar story, you can always reach out
For sure.
via email or whatever,
Mm-hmm.
and we'll get you connected with somebody that can help you out. Please like and share, subscribe.
Sure.
Um, my name is Richie. Thank you for tuning in to 12 Step Up.